All right, welcome everybody who's here and who's watching the recording for DES 243 for layout design. We were just talking in the chat before we started about how, technology and things going wrong and everything else. I'm trying to get Zoom to work on both my iPad and my computer. I always like to run our sessions in the background so I can watch and make sure, keep an eye on and the chat over there, and that's not working. And I was stating that this weekend my keyboard broke for my Mac, and that was $130 to buy a new one. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me, Apple. And I kind of have a funny story because we're talking about, layout design and everything else. So I'm going to turn on my camera for a second so I can show you guys this. Usually Apple's pretty spot on with their marketing and their design of everything. And this is the information booklet that came with my $130 keyboard. The text is so small. I wear glasses anyways when I'm on the computer, but these glasses have a +1 magnification because they work great when I'm in Photoshop and I'm really doing really intricate work. Like I had them specially do these lenses for that type of work. And this was me this weekend trying to read the instructions on how to set up this keyboard because it's one of those magic keyboards and it has a lightning USB cable, and I thought it had to be Bluetooth, but it ends up I can plug it in, which is great. And it wasn't even for my laptop, which is what I run our live sessions on. It was for my other Mac, the trash, we call it the trash can. It's the Power PC. And I use that to run, to do our grading and all of that because I can just run more programs simultaneously on it. So that, and I think we've had that computer for forever, but we never use it. So the keyboard was pretty much new on top of it all. And that was $130 to replace it. And then they gave us a booklet with, this has to be based on, my years of doing design 4 or 5 point type. That is just absolutely ridiculous, especially seeing as the box that the keyboard came in is this big. I think that they could have sprung and done a booklet with normal size type. I don't know how anybody who has any type of problem, reading. I mean, I can read technically without my glasses on. It's just easier with them. I mean, if people literally have eyesight issues and older people buy Macs now, I can't even imagine trying to do this. So I just thought that was quite possibly the most ridiculous thing, especially, where we're going over design and readability and making sure that things look good. But at the end of the day, there's usability for the person who is reading it. Apple just completely missed the mark with that one. And with the delete key breaking on their keyboards, which is apparently a very common thing. All right, so vent done. Let's get back into the course for today. But I just found that to be one of the most ridiculous things that I had seen in a while. And I definitely had to share that with everyone because that was just so insane how small the text was on that. And I'm still going to try to get our course up and running on Zoom on my iPad so I can see what's going on. I had to restart that bad boy. But yeah, I heard from another FPA that, Mercury's in retrograde right now. And it's very true. It really does kind of wreak havoc from time to time on our electrical devices and our computers. And I, unfortunately, have been at the receiving end of that in the last couple of weeks. Nothing has been working on my end. All right, so our agenda for today, I'm going to go over some announcements. We're going to go over the discussion, and we're going to talk about grids, and more grids today. There's so much to talk about when it comes to grids and defining different types of grids and everything else. So a reminder about our due dates in the course, assignments and assessments, they're due by Saturday at midnight for full credit. And make sure that you're communicating with me regarding late work, because that's going to save you missed points. So all it takes is an email ahead of time to let me know that your work is going to be late. And, that really is all it takes. Week 4 assignments cannot be turned in late. The course will turn into a pumpkin. If something goes wrong when you are uploading your assignments for week 4, I will go over this every live session. Make sure that you email the file to me immediately so I have it first thing in the morning on Sunday of week 4. I'm not one of those instructors that will say, oh, it needed to be uploaded. As long as it's in my email, when I get up in the morning to grade, because I get up and grade first thing in the morning on Sundays, I will grade it if there was a problem. Also, we have a discussion post for this week, and your original discussion post is due by Wednesday at midnight, and you need to respond to 2 of your fellow students by Saturday, and make sure you're posting on 2 different days. Also, if you miss the discussion post for week 1, the deadline to submit that late is this Saturday. So if you miss that, please try to get it in, and please also respond to 2 of your fellow students so that way you'll get as many points as possible. Again, our live sessions are Mondays and Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. This gives you ample time during the week to get your assignments done. And if you do need any outside help, the Student Success Center is open with tutoring available and no appointment is necessary. And if you are missing some work from this week, you definitely have an email from me. So please make sure that you're responding to my emails. I hate feeling as though I'm just yelling into the wind. Hello, is anybody out there listening to me? I definitely want to make sure that you guys are getting your work in, that you're, that you're not running into any technical issues that I'm not aware of. I can't help you if I don't know what the situation is. So just make sure that you're getting in touch with me. All right, so let's take a look at Wanda Bryant's Learning Coach flyer for this week, and then go over some tips for a successful week 2. So Wanda is our learning coach. She has hours Tuesday and Friday of this week. So she's available from 5 to 9 p.m. on Tuesdays and from 12 to 5 p.m. on Friday. It looks like she has a couple of days off this week. She must have taken a vacation. However, there are other learning coaches in there who will be able to help you out with our assignment this week. So even though Wanda's not going to be there, I can assure you that there will be other learning coaches who will be in there that can help you out. And we can take a look and see what the hours for the learning coaches is this week. Where are you, graphic design? Oh, here you are. I wish it was in alphabetical order. So this week, there's hours on today from 12 to 9 p.m., tomorrow from 10 to 4 and from 5 to 9, Wednesday from 5 to 11 p.m., Thursday from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday from 9 to 5 p.m., and then from 6 to 11 p.m., and then Saturday from 4 to 10 p.m. So you can see there's still some, her backup probably is DJ. I would assume that. And I've worked with DJ many times in the past. She's also awesome. I feel like everyone in there is awesome. Like, we have so many great learning coaches. So, whoever's in there, they'll definitely try their best to help you out. And if they can't, they'll usually, let you know, like, hey, so-and-so is going to be in if you want to pop back in when they come in. So they're really good. All right, so let's look at our tips for a successful week 2. Here's my policy regarding resubmissions. I do allow 1 resubmission per assignment or assessment for a better grade, but the auto-graded quizzes, those are exempt. All resubmissions must be completed by the Tuesday of week 4, so that's August 14th. And I'm like, man, that seems so far away. Can you believe that Wednesday is going to be the first day of August? I can't believe how fast this summer's going by. It felt like it was freezing cold until, I don't know, a week ago, and now the summer's almost over. Discussion posts cannot be resubmitted. However, if you're missing work from week 1, there's still time to fix this. Try and get those missing assignments or assessments in as soon as you can. There's still time to bring up grades going into week 2. Don't forget the readings and videos from week 2. They're located on the readings and videos tab in your course. If you do need some extra help from the writing center, make sure that you submit those papers or make a live appointment. Oh, you're lucky. Your temp never goes below 65 or over 80. Oh, I'm telling you, I need to move where you are, Roxanne. If you do want to come to the live session live, or if you did come live and then you want to find the recording later on, that's available in both the live session tab and in the announcements. If you need some extra help, make sure you're visiting the Student Success Center. We just went over what those hours are. And if you do need some extra help with your computer, you can visit computer support. Don't forget about those daily checkpoints. Remember, those can make or break your grades each week. And Adobe Help is offered on Thursdays and Fridays of each week with Sean and James. So again, just try to do what you can to have a successful week 2. Email me early if you have any questions or concerns. And while we're in here, why don't we take a look at our discussion for this week? And here's another thing too. If you run into any problems, I did check in our course and the reply button is here. If you run into any problems in the discussion where the reply button does not appear to be there, please let me know as soon as possible. My other course that I'm teaching, the reply button isn't showing up for my students. It's showing up for me, and it's showing up that it's supposed to show up for my students. So I had to submit a ticket to have them fix it earlier today. But sometimes weird things can happen in the masters, and I don't know what's happening in the master to get that fixed. So, I might not see it on my end. So just kind of give me a heads up, and I can go and contact the people that need to get contacted to get that fixed. Sometimes if I don't see, by Monday, I usually see 1 or 2 discussion posts, but not always, because, some people take Sunday off and they start working on things on Monday. So, I get it. But yeah, just give me a heads up if you see like anything in the course that just looks really weird, and I'll try to take a look at it on my end, and if I can't fix it, I will find somebody who can. I will yell and scream into the wind until I can find someone who can. All right, so let's look at the background for this week. To grid or not to grid? I guess that is the question. As designers, our composition layouts must provide a clear path for our viewers or readers utilizing an advanced grid system. A grid offers the designer a means for making efficient design decisions and is especially useful when there are many elements to organize and establish a visual hierarchy. Every design problem is different, and each requires a grid system that addresses the project's specific needs. Using a grid permits the designer to lay out enormous amounts of information, such as in a magazine. Hint, hint, what we're working on this mod. In substantially less time, because many design considerations have been addressed when building the grid system. There are several types of grids utilized for effective composition layouts. Each creates endless opportunities for exploration, and each is suited to solve different design problems. There's the manuscript grid. This is a really simple grid structure, and it's an excellent choice for book or magazine layout when working with large continuous blocks of text spanning multiple pages. Your choice of typeface, font size, leading, etc. will make up the most of your design decisions. Then we have the column grid. A column grid can be used to separate blocks of information by placing them in different columns. For example, several columns in a magazine layout may be reserved for body copy and large images, while other columns may contain captions and pull quotes. This type of grid is a great way to keep magazine content organized and structured. Then we have the modular grid. A modular grid is essentially a column grid, but with the addition of horizontal rows. For more complex designs, such as an advertisement or a magazine cover, a modular grid may be the best choice. Then last, we have that hierarchical grid. A hierarchical grid is used for design projects where the alignment of elements changes depending on the content. So web pages are the most common examples of a hierarchical grid. The grids achieve a level of consistency in your multi-page document. Grids are the glue that hold the design together. Being able to identify and utilize an advanced grid system can save valuable time and is another tool alongside many design principles you can use to create effective composition layouts. So our prompt for this week: in the world of graphic design, which we're all living in that world these days, where each creative professional is continually looking for ways to apply effective composition layouts faster and better, utilizing an advanced grid system can significantly speed up and improve your design time. Grids have many uses and are much more than just lines on a page. They create a structure for your layout, they align and balance your multi-page layout, and they shape your design in a way that helps you to achieve your desired outcome. For this discussion, you're going to research and discuss the way grid systems are used to create an effective composition layout. So what you need to do is choose one example of a 2-page magazine layout or an example of a 1-page advertisement and post it with your comment. So you need to embed that image into your post. From the list below, identify which type of grid structure is being utilized. Is it the best type of grid to use to create an effective composition layout? So you might find a 1-page magazine advertisement or 2-page magazine layout where the grid that they have chosen to use, you don't think it's very effective. So if it is effective, explain to me why it's effective. And if it's not effective and you want to explain to me how you would fix it using a different grid, name the different grid that you would use and explain that. So for your initial post, the following are some helpful topics to think about carefully to get your research started. Number 1, what benefits do grids add to an effective layout or an effective composition layout? How can a well-defined grid structure help solve design challenges and communicate design concepts efficiently? Do different grids restrict the designer's ability, leaving no freedom for creativity? That's an interesting one. How can grids take the guesswork out of where to place things on your page? For your citation, you can find articles from expert graphic designers that offer suggestions how they apply effective composition layouts using an advanced grid system. So instructions, if needed, to upload and embed images in the discussion is right here. And then if you want to learn how to upload a file to your user or group files, you can read this. So 2 links to help you with those images that you need to embed. All right, and then per the due dates and participation requirements, you must have that substantial main post of 150 words and 1 APA citation. And then you need to have 2 follow-up posts that are at least 50 words. And the responses can be addressed to both your initial thread and other threads, but they need to be in your own words. So don't copy and paste the same response to 2 different people. Each reply should be unique and substantial in nature. And remember that part of the discussion grade is submitting it on time and using proper grammar and spelling. So that is our discussion for this week. Again, to grid or not to grid, I kind of like the name of that discussion for this week. And we're going to talk about grids. We're going to talk about a lot today. So let's go to full screen and get this party started. So we definitely use a grid because it helps to create balance on our page. And the primary objective of any page that we're designing, whether it's for a printed piece or if it's for a web page or even a web app, is to communicate the information clearly and effectively to the reader. And one of the best ways that we can ensure that the key message is delivered to the reader is to create a balanced layout. It keeps everything in its place. And there's something to be said for that. You know, there are times where you're going to want to break the grid, or you're going to specifically design something without a grid. And there are reasons for that. But at the end of the day, the whole reason behind why we are designing something is we want to make sure that the information gets to our reader and that they're able to take it all in and it makes sense when they see it. And that's where that balance and creating that balance on our page comes into play. So page layout typically involves a lot of placement. You know, you've got your text, you might have some images, you have a logo, you might have a call to action where they want to put something in a burst. You know, you might have a bleed on the page where images or color needs to bleed. You know, there's a lot of rearranging and formatting of those elements on the page. And many designers approach this process organically, you know, feeling their way, you know, to a pleasing end result. And this can lead to some excellent happy accidents, but there's also the risk that that's not going to happen. And using a free-form methodology can result in a lack of visual balance on the page. So at the end of the day, you know, especially when you're new to doing this, that grid really, you know, helps you to maintain your structure. And that's really the point of it. It's that added element that will simplify your design process for you. Because again, you know, graphic design isn't always about reinventing the wheel every single time that you create something. So good page composition, it should be both pleasing to the eye and also communicate those key messages clearly to the intended audience. So I've gathered together, you know, some top tips to help you ensure that your page layouts have balance. And these approaches will work well to provide a structure for balance regardless of the medium that you're working with. So again, you know, going back to that Apple booklet that I showed you, and I have another booklet where kind of to just make my point, you know, again, you know, pleasing to the eye, and is it cool? Sure, it's cool, Apple, but it doesn't really work for, you know, what we need it to. So thanks. So this was Apple's little booklet, and then this is the Razer mouse that I bought actually a couple of weeks ago. This was their booklet. So again, you know, two well-designed pieces and pleasing to the eye, but with the Razer mouse, I know it's kind of hard to see because I'm trying to get the glare off, although I don't know if that helped much. You can kind of see the text there, reflected at least. But you know, they at least, it is still some small text, but I feel like it's a little bit more manageable. Their pictures are a little bit bigger to show you what it is that they're talking about, and things are labeled. But again, still some small type. But stop and think about the packaging for a mouse. Like, here's my mouse. So you can kind of see where this booklet fits in to the size of the packaging. And it makes sense that the booklet had to be a little bit smaller because you're not going to have a ginormous box when you're just buying a mouse. However, I showed you the box to the keyboard, and it's big because it's a keyboard. It's a full-size keyboard, even with the full number pad on the side. So to have this little tiny booklet, again, come on, you know, it's not conducive to the reader in getting your information across to the reader. And at the end of the day, yeah, sure, it might look cool, but was the end result what it needed to be to achieve its purpose? And it's the purpose of this booklet was to tell me how to work my keyboard, how to get my keyboard set up. So if I can't get my keyboard set up, I can't use my keyboard. So at the end of the day, readability is extremely important with a packaging piece like this. And I think that they missed the mark. All right, I'm going to turn this off again. I keep saying my rant is done with Apple today, but clearly it's not. So even though I'm sure that this used a grid system, and I can definitely see the grid that they used, it's kind of funny because it's printed so small, and the binding is a glue binding that they used in this little booklet. So they didn't even leave themselves enough of a margin in the gutter when you're opening it up, and the text starts to run into the gutter. So you have to really peel the little tiny booklet open. So again, just, I'm going to keep coming back to this, I'm sure. Like I'm going to use this. This is going to be my go-to example from now on. Maybe it looks cool, but it doesn't, it doesn't work in its intended way. It doesn't work for the viewer. All right. So using a grid, one of the easiest ways that you can ensure that your page has a degree of balance is to use a grid system. Grids used to be the sole preserve of the printed page, but much work has been completed online in the past few years to help migrate the concept of the grid across to the digital medium. By using a grid to inform the position of different elements on a page, you'll create a connection between the different elements that make up your page. And this can help provide a sense of order to your layout, providing the reader with a clear structural reference to fall back on. So here we can see this grid, and we can see that we have a space marked out for our image, and we can see that our body copy is spanning 2 columns, and then we can also see that our headline and probably the author's byline is again expanding 2 columns. So this is important because when all your page elements have a feeling of connectivity with each other, the overall effect feels more comfortable to the reader, helping to put them at ease and facilitating their access to the important stuff, the content. Again, because it can look cool, but if I can't access the content, the piece has failed. So what are some of the things that we notice about this grid? And you guys can type them in the chat. What do you notice about this grid? And I'll see if you're picking up on what it is that I'm looking for. It is a square grid, and there's 5 columns. Yep. Actually, there's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 rows. But I think it would just keep going down. But there's space in between each of the columns. See, we have some space right here. We have space built in between each of these columns. Oh, yeah, that'll happen. You can make that all minimized so it's not all over the page. And one of the things about the spaces is you'll notice the text box does not go right up to the bottom of the image, and it doesn't go right up to the right-hand side of the image. We built in a nice padding around the elements on the page. So one of the things that makes your design effective is choosing a single focal point. So one of the most effective ways to provide a sense of balance is to choose a single focal point for your layout. A good example of this is in practice is the use of a large image as the biggest single element on a page. So right here we can see we have that large image blocked out. And that strong visual can provide a powerful way to lead the reader into your page, and also supplies a useful structural element around which to arrange your remaining content. Whoops, hold on. Can't see what that word is. Oh, that's weird. It looks fine over here, but not over here. do that and try to present it. That's bizarre. Anyways, and it also supplies a useful structural element around which to arrange your remaining content, which is, that's a good thing, because sometimes, we always need to start somewhere. So I think it's best sometimes to start with your focal point and then move on from there. So if you have multiple visual elements, use the proximity principle of the Gestalt theory to group them together, aligning them in the same way. It's also worth keeping in mind that you can use a headline or a pull quote. So a pull quote is when you see that big quotation mark that big quote in the middle of the page. I don't know if I have an example here. I used to keep some magazines on my desk, but then I moved my desk around and I honestly don't know where the magazines went. I probably accidentally threw them away. But, any magazine that you flip through, you'll see that big pull quote. And that can be, your visual interest too, because it can have as much visual interest as an image. And it continues to provide that structure that will help to ensure your balanced layout. All right, so I had mentioned the Gestalt theory, and there are 6 Gestalt principles, and I can barely say that word. It takes all of my mental willpower to say that word. So there's similarity, continuation, closure, proximity, figure and ground, and then symmetry and order. So similarity. That's when objects look similar to one another, and viewers will often see the individual elements as part of a pattern or group. And this effect can be used to create a single illustration, image, or message from a series of separate elements. Phonetically, Gestalt, yes. So in this picture right here, we see the Statue of Liberty, but if we really look, all it is triangles to make up that image. And so, each object is just a triangle, but all together, it resembles the Statue of Liberty. So it's pretty cool how that works. Then we have continuation. So continuation is the principle through which the eye is drawn along a path, a line or a curve, preferring to see a single continuous figure rather than separate lines. This can be used to point towards another element in the composition and is seen where a line is cut through one object, often a curve, aligning perfectly with the secondary element. So right here is our continuation. We've just cut some space out of the word space that leads us right to the star at the end. And our eye just follows this line right to the star. Then we have closure. So closure is a common design technique that uses the human eye's tendency to see closed shapes. Closure works where an object is incomplete or the interior space of an element is not fully closed, but the viewer perceives a complete shape by filling in the missing information. And this technique is often associated with stenciled artwork, but is also closely associated with many logo forms. So the World Wildlife Federation has a great example of that closure in their logo. Our eye closes up the panda where it needs to close up. Then we have proximity, and that's that grouping that we've talked about. We talk about proximity a lot. So proximity uses a close arrangement of elements to create a group association between those objects. If individual elements are also similar, they will tend to be perceived as a single whole, even though they're separate elements. So proximity or grouping can be achieved with lots of different commonality, including shape, color, texture, size, or any other visual attribute. So when I've talked about proximity in the past, I've kind of given the example of putting all of the contact information together, you know, keeping the address, the phone number, the web address all together on your page in close proximity to one another, because that's all of the contact information that somebody is going to be looking for in order to get in touch with the company. So you want to make sure that they find all of that information in the same place. If I had the address and the phone number right here, and way over here I have the web address, my mind is probably going to read this and say, oh, they mustn't have a web address, because I might not get over here, you know, if I'm just scanning the page looking for something. So that's where that, you know, grouping that like information together really does help. And then we have the figure and the ground. So these are, you know, things that you probably, you know, were shown as a child back in elementary school. Remember how you would have like the two faces, and then if you looked at the negative space, you could see the candlestick in between the two faces. This is kind of a crop version of it. So, or a vase, I guess this one's supposed to be a vase. So this principle describes the eye's tendency to see and separate objects from their surrounding background. And a classic example uses a vase candlestick illustration to show two faces peering at each other, but you can also see this effect in a variety of logo designs. It works because the human eye wants to see the figure, the foreground object, and the background as two different planes of focus. So another one that plays into that figure and ground when we're talking about logos is the FedEx logo, which you've probably seen in a whole bunch of other classes, but I'm going to pull it up. So our eye sees FedEx, but right here in that negative space, we have that arrow, you know, to signify the shipping, getting your package there, Express. So a great use of that figure and ground in a logo. And then we have symmetry and order. So you can achieve symmetry by providing a good balance or sense of symmetry in your design elements, such as this windmill illustration. This provides the viewer with a feeling of harmony. And again, each of these shapes are exactly the same. They're the same shape, they're just a different hue, and the opacity is the same, and they are all overlaid on top of each other. And where the symmetry is that balance of, you know, the precise measurement of how they are laid out on the page, which creates this windmill effect, which I guess it would be turning, it's probably turning this way. And there really is that sense of harmony. If one of these was just off just a little bit, you would lose that entire feeling of symmetry. You would lose that entire feeling of harmony. It would just be, oh, just a bit off. All right, back to our page composition that we were discussing before we went on a Gestalt tantrum. All right, so next we have the rule of thirds and using the rule of thirds. One of the best ways to provide a sense of balance is to use the designer's favorite rule of thirds, or that golden ratio. So put simply, the rule of thirds says that if you divide your page into thirds, both vertically and horizontally, the points at which the grid lines intersect provides the natural focal point of a composition, and that our eye is going to kind of do this. You've probably seen that illustration of the golden ratio. Let me pull that up for you. So it's an actual mathematics equation at the end of the day. So here's a good example of it. So we have you know, the side-by-side golden rectangle and golden ratio. Here's another one with layout examples. So this is a good thing to look up if you're looking for a grid structure and wondering what might work. here's a great golden rectangle grid structure, and then here is that actual golden ratio right there, which is a grid structure. So we have it, you can see it in Greek architecture. Pretty interesting. In the Last Supper. And even in nature. So there's some great resources on how to construct it, drawing a square, dividing the square, drawing a diagonal line, rotating it, creating a new rectangle. And, if you want to follow that, it's that's a good way of kind of coming up with a grid structure. So by aligning your key elements to all these 4 points, where the grids intersect, you'll achieve a more pleasing composition than if you, for example, perfectly center all the elements on your page. So you can see that we have 2 columns right here, and they line up very well. Everything kind of intersects very well. In itself, the rule of thirds, it won't magically provide your layout with balance, but by extending the principle, it's easy to use this tendency towards a natural focal point that will help to inform the balance of your layout. So again, nothing is going to solve every single problem for you, but it gives you a good starting point, to really get that design going. And a common approach is to place the most important elements of your page in the upper or the lower third of the page, with the primary focal point aligned to match one of the intersections. So here we have the headline, one of the most important parts of the important elements, and it's right there in those focal points. All right, next we have using that white space. So it's common for novice designers to make use of every single bit of space on a page, stuffing in the content until every single gap has been filled. But the more experienced designers know that sometimes the best bit of design involves leaving elements out rather than shoehorning them all in. So in the printed medium, the most common way to make use of white space is by enlarging the page margins and gutters. On the web, you can simply providing plenty of breathing room around the elements can help make the layout feel composed and balanced too. And that's where we, when we design websites, we actually add in something called padding, and think of it as, when you are wrapping up dishes to move, and you pad everything in and you give more space in between the different dishes so they don't clank into each other, when being moved. It's the same exact thing. We're kind of padding our elements on our page with some white space. So using negative space works best when you have a clear structure that anchors the content together, such as that provided by a grid, as the risk of white space can be a sense of disconnection between page elements if it's introduced haphazardly. So you can see there's a definite, thought process between this this white space here. It fits into our grid. If we just randomly started our text box down here, it wouldn't feel as symmetrical. It would kind of feel a little bit more haphazard, but it's now part of our grid system. And then another thing that we can do is to repeat our design elements. So that's actually another Gestalt principle, repetition. It can provide a strong sense of connected design and balance to a composition. The idea is that by identifying and reusing a motif or design treatment throughout your layout, you can provide a reference for the reader so that disparate areas feel connected and part of the same overall composition. So in this, they've repeated that octagon shape, throughout the layout, and it kind of just ties in that white space. It's not filling the space though. The screen the fact that it's not 100%, that really still lets the eye have that white space as well. You can also use this technique to provide a focal point to your design while retaining an overall balance by intentionally breaking the pattern of similarity that was introduced through the repetition. So again, your eye really follows the information throughout the piece. Then we can use hierarchy. So you've probably seen that, in your comments in the past from your instructors, there's not enough visual hierarchy in your design. So what that hierarchy is it's one of the key approaches to achieving layout nirvana, and it's a clear sense of structure and hierarchy. So we've already touched on structure, but it's important to also convey the relative importance of different pieces of content on your page. So your hierarchy would be a headline. That's your biggest, boldest type. Then you would have your subheadline, then your body copy. So the hierarchy starts at the headline and moves its way down to probably the author byline, which might have the least amount of hierarchy on the page. So that headline should almost always be more visually important than the body text content. Because if you can't pull them in with your headline, there's a good chance they're not going to read your paragraph text. So look at the different elements that make up your page and decide which element is the most important, and then use this element to provide a structural hook for the remaining elements on the page, keeping it the most important. And again, it doesn't need to be a headline. It might be an image. It might be a logo. There's so many different things that could be the most important element on your page. Use scale, contrast, and harmony. So finally, the use of scale can be a very effective method for achieving a good visual balance in your layout. By making some elements larger than others, there's a sense of order and hierarchy that will emerge. And this helps create a comfortable layout because the viewer will automatically look at the larger elements within the layout first, progressing through the smaller elements as they read. So again, if you've pulled them in with your headline, there's a better chance that they're going to read through the content on your page. This principle also works with increased contrast, so that by isolating an element on the page through contrast will make the eye focus on that point first. And this provides a way into the page and again gives a useful structural point to develop your layout from. Both scale and contrast work best when they apply to one element, making it stand out from the other parts of your layout. Use the principles of harmony to make the others feel connected and accentuate the focal point. So, you probably noticed in each of those examples, there was a grid. But again, and we're going to touch upon this in our discussion this week, there are definitely different types of grids out there. So let's take a look at them. I'm just going to mute myself for 1 second. I have to blow my nose, which allergies are awful today, so I do apologize. Just hold on 1 second. All right, apologize for that. So you're saying that with in those examples, those colored squares made you want to look up there and not at the text first? That can happen. And, and there is some information up there. It's kind of hard to tell because this is just, dummy text that they have in, like lorem ipsum text. Or it might say something that's in a different language. But this can also signify placeholders for images, which might be important and would tie into your would tie into your headline, which again, if those images draw you in, you're also going to want to read the copy. So you can see where it all does work together. All right, so as we were discussing in the discussion, there is the manuscript grid, the column grid, and the modular grid, and the hierarchical grid. Hierarchical is a very difficult word for me to say. I'm not going to lie. So I'm probably going to butcher that word throughout this entire presentation. Yeah, it definitely, most of the time when you do mock-ups, that's a good point. It looks like something's missing. A lot of the times when we're designers, we make things that we call FPO, for placement only. So we mock something up how we want it to look to show to someone. We say we can add your content in here. So you would have a spot on the page for 3 different images. You would have a spot on the page for a headline, a sub-headline, and some small copy up here, or maybe something that would relate back to these images. Like the black space in the page, yes, that we left for the table of contents last week. Exactly. That's our, that was just kind of for placement only for right now. We're going to add some content in later. Exactly. So I like that you notice that, we do that a lot in graphic design, because sometimes we don't get right up front, we don't get all of the elements from our clients. They say, I know I'm going to have 3 images coming, but the photographer hasn't taken the images yet. Well, if we want to get started on that design, we need to come up with a layout and leave a space for 3 images. So these are the different things that we do. So we just kind of put in those color blocks so we can submit the rest of it back to our client and say, is this something that you were thinking of? 3 smaller elements, maybe you wanted, maybe we can embed some of the images in here. Maybe you don't want any images at all. Maybe you want them to run vertically along the side of the text. Maybe you want that one large image instead as a focal point. So those are all the different things that we can kind of do a mock-up with all the same verbiage, but just showing different ideas of how to get those elements onto the page for our client. So, all right, let's talk about that manuscript grid. So this one seems not very complex. It's just kind of a square on the page. Sometimes it's called a block grid. Again, not a very interesting name. Or a single column grid. It's really only one column. The manuscript grid is the simplest grid structure. It's mainly a large rectangle area that takes up most of the space inside of a format. And the primary structure in the manuscript grid is defined by large blocks of text and margins, which position the block within that format. Its secondary structure defines the location and proportions of folios, so where your page numbers would go at the bottom, footnotes, running headers, and other secondary information. No problem, Amber. You can watch the rest of it on the recording. No problem at all. So manuscript grids, they're good for extensive and continuous blocks of text. That's why they're used in books. Think of the word manuscript. Long essays, and perhaps lend themselves well to blog posts. I'm sure you've seen blog posts where it's just one big block of text. They aren't limited to text, though. Images can be used to fill that space as well. By adjusting the margins, designers can help to create interest. More opportunities for this exist where 2-page spreads are used, as in a magazine or books. But even on a single page, interest can be created through margins alone. The wider margins can lead to narrower text blocks, which will help focus the eye on the text and create a sense of calm and stability. So let's pretend that we bring this margin in really far right here and bring this margin in really far right here. And then we have this one single block, but it's skinnier. We can also have narrower margins, like we have in the example, which force the text blocks to the edge of the format, creating tension as the two get nearer and closer to each other. And then asymmetrically placed text blocks may add visual interest and leave a larger block of white space on one side to allow the eye to rest. So that would be if we just kind of bring it in only on this side. Because of the simplicity of manuscript grids, typography is going to play an important part in creating visual interest. So that means your choice of typefaces, the font sizes, the leading, the measure, the hierarchy of that text, that's what will make up most of your design choices when you're using a manuscript grid. So given the name, we naturally associate, again, like I had said before, that manuscript grid with the printed page. However, if you think of any fixed width layout, it's essentially one large block that's located within a format, and that would be your browser window. So designers typically center these layouts, but with all of those different ideas we were just kind of talking about in mind, perhaps there's a better way or a better place to locate your layout rather than just in the center. And that's why, you know, keeping it asymmetrical might work and give it a little bit of something different. Next, we have those column grids. So this was the example that I used last week when I was putting together my example for the magazine. So when people think of grids, especially online, they likely think of a column grid. As you would expect, column grids are made up by placing multiple columns within the format, and column grids are good when discontinuous information needs to be presented. So for example, you might have various asides. Those are sidebars, sidebar information. If you think of a web page, and sometimes there's something that runs along the sidebar, but even in magazines, you know, you might have your article that goes here and here, and then some key points from the article might be bulleted in the sidebar. Textbooks do that a lot. You know, they put the key terms over here in the sidebar where they define them for you. So that's a good way to show that information. You know, one column might be reserved for text, another might be reserved for images, and then yet another could even be reserved for image captions. You know, the columns can be dependent on each other, or they can be independent from each other and crossed over by design elements. So this leads to a large amount of flexibility when you're organizing information on the page. You can separate blocks of information by placing them inside of different columns, and you can also still show a connection between them. You know, perhaps the text in one column and the images and captions in a different column next to the text images, they relate to each other. The width of a column should depend on some elements internal to the design, most likely the size of your text. And a column should be able to accommodate a comfortable measure for reading and avoid excessive hyphenation at the end of the lines. So if you notice when you put your text in that you're getting all of these hyphens, you might want to extend the width of your columns. I like that. I saw one magazine where they used the gutter area for vertical text in the line downward. That's interesting. I wonder how that looked. I'd be interested to see that. And then a column should be able to accommodate a comfortable measure for reading and avoid excessive hyphenation again at the end of those lines. So too wide or too narrow a column and the reading becomes difficult. They say that one of the best column widths is between an alphabet and 2 alphabets worth of text. So think about the alphabet in a line, and you don't want to go any longer than 2 alphabets worth of text. Also, we have those column gutters. So that's that space in between the columns. And when the margins are wider than the gutters between the columns, the eye is guided inward and the tension is eased. So I have a bigger margin on my edges than I have of my gutters. It's actually double the width. That's a really good number. And then it's a little bit more. I have that full, the same width here as right here, and I've added a little bit more in to put my folio in. Again, to keep this as white space. So there's no hard rules to this, but traditionally, if the size of the gutter is X, then the margin is usually set to 2X, so 2 times the size. And flow lines can be used in column grids to help set the subordinate structure or to allow for unusual breaks in text and images. So hang lines and base lines, those can help establish where different elements will be positioned vertically between the 2 columns. Next, we have a modular grid, which it looks like we took our column grid and just broke it down even further, because that's basically what we did. So modular grids are like column grids with the addition of horizontal divisions marked by rows. So kind of think of, Excel right now. The columns and rows and the gutters between each create a matrix of cells or modules to put things in. Modular grids are good for complex projects that require more control than a column grid can offer. Image galleries and shopping carts are likely candidates for a modular grid. You can probably see it in your mind, an image gallery and how it's set up with a modular grid. So modular grids lend themselves to the design of tabular information such as charts, forms, navigation, schedules, and of course tables of data. They can help standardize the space in tables and help integrate tables with any surrounding text or images. So again, kind of going back to what happens when you open up Excel. Each module in the grid can define a small chunk of information, or adjacent modules can be combined to form fields or spatial zones, each designated to hold a specific type of information. The smaller modules allow for a more flexible grid with greater precision, but they can become confusing to work with. Imagine, for example, if you were setting up a modular grid with each module was only 1 pixel by 1 pixel. You would have a ton of flexibility, but not much practical use. Yeah, think of the shopping cart. Think of your Amazon shopping cart. When you put things in, it shows, your first item here, your second item here, your third item here. Things are all, they don't kind of run into each other in a column. Things don't go like this. Each item in your shopping cart is kind of in its own set area inside of the shopping cart, and then you probably have the button that you click down here. So modules can be either horizontal or vertical, and the proportion of the module can be determined in a variety of ways. Yes, online shopping carts. Although, I don't know about you, but when I go shopping, I do try to set up my actual grocery shopping cart in a very modular way, and my husband tells me I have extreme OCD when it comes to doing that. So you can determine those modules in a lot of different ways. You can average the width and height of a paragraph. You can average the image size. You can add the unit size. You can, type proportions like letting it measure. Margin proportions will ideally be considered at the same time as module and gutter proportions, as they each kind of relate and affect each other. Large publishing systems that present information across a variety of formats often use modular grids to keep design proportions consistent. This can help a company maintain brand consistency. Look at our course. If we go into our course, modular system right here. Everything in here is in a module. We're in a mod. Right now, we're in mod 8. We are modules inside of the module right now. So we have this information inside of this modular grid. We have this information inside of this modular grid. We have the entire course inside of the modular grid of mod 8. Mod 8 is inside of the modular grid of 2018. We're just all about the modular grids here at Independence. So you can kind of see when you really break it down to just the rectangles, you can definitely see the grid there. Aside from the obvious practical use, modular grids have developed an aesthetic image. Between 1950 and 1980, they became associated with an ideal social and political order that had its roots in rationalism. The Bauhaus and Swiss style celebrate objectivity, order, and minimalism, and turn to modular grids to maintain clarity and form. This order and clarity can be used to create additional meaning. For example, it often conveys a technical or urban feeling and naturally communicates mathematical information. And I love Swiss and Bauhaus design. I find it so clean and organized, and I'm just generally attracted to that. So I am really attracted to a modular grid as well. Then we have our hierarchical, oh, I have it spelled wrong too. Whoops. Back. Hierarchical. There we go. Our hierarchical grid. And those grids are commonly found on the web. They're based on more of an intuitive placement of elements, which still conforms to the needs of the information. Hierarchical grids are good when a project requires an odd grid that doesn't easily fit one of the other grid types and can be used to unify different elements and create a superstructure for organizing them. So normally, here would be your logo for your web page. You would probably have your navigation up here. This would be, possibly white space. You would have your main image or your main article on your web page, and then you would have 3 other articles, and here would be your sidebar. You can kind of see a web page set up this way in your mind. So, where was I on this? Commonly found on the web, based on intuitive placement. Customized proportions are typically used in hierarchical grids instead of regularly repeated intervals. Column widths tend to vary, as do the location of the flow lines. And they can be thought of as a loose organic grid. Even though it looks pretty structured, you can still think of it as a loose organic grid. Development often begins by spontaneously placing design elements, and later a rational structure to coordinate those elements is determined. So if you've designed websites where you've carefully aligned elements to each other without using one of the previous 3 grid types, you're probably approaching a hierarchical grid structure in your design. That's when we tend to use it the most. Again, on the web. So to recap, we have those manuscript grids. They're the simplest. They work really well when they present large continuous blocks of text or images. But, again, you're just starting with that big block. It's kind of hard to visualize where to put things within it. Then we have the column grid, which works well with the information being presented. It's discontinuous, and different types of information can be placed in different columns. Then we have our modular grid, which works best for more complex problems where the columns alone don't offer enough flexibility, and we can introduce horizontal space between those blocks of content. Then we have our hierarchical grids, which a lot of times is like we didn't have a grid, but now all of a sudden we do have one. Those can be used when none of the above grids will work to solve the problem. And they tend to be created organically by first placing design elements on the page and then finding a rational structure for presenting those elements. It can be, you can use a hierarchical grid this week for your assignment. It's kind of up to you. It's like you really need to look at the information and figure out which grid is going to work best. And sometimes that is going to be the hierarchical grid where you just need to get the information on the page and then develop a grid from the information. And I do get that. Kind of where that happens. Yeah, okay, yes. So, you know, I really do like the idea of even starting with the, you know, the golden ratio for your grid. Where's page 1 of this article? Like, let's actually lay out this golden ratio and try to use it in a way. All right, I am going to make a 2-page spread right now because I feel like, you know, based on the width, a 2-page spread is going to be the best way to kind of set this up. So let me get InDesign going. All right, let's do print. I'm going to do 8.5 by 11, 2 pages, and I want facing pages starting on page 1, 1 column. I'll leave my margin where it is for now. No, I want facing pages. Oh, let me see if I can. Come on. Set up side. I want you to set up side by side. I might need to make this. Hold on. Three pages. There we go. I'll work on page 2 and 3. All right. Chew over here. Chew over here. Chew over here. Oh, jeez. You guys over here. All right. And I'm going to copy this image. Actually, let me see if I can find my golden ratio, a large version of it. Large. What size are you? Oh, that's a good size. Open image in a new tab. There we go. Nice and big. All right. Whoops. So, start at my margin. Place that in. All right. So I've got my golden ratio, and one of the interesting things is this kind of going over into this page. So let's try to drop some rules of where we're going to place things. Right here. Here. I just want to be consistent and place my rulers at the top of the black line each time. And at the left-hand side of the black line each time. Although it wants to, there we go. All right. Oh, and I missed one. So when I delete that, I should have, there we go. And I'm gonna lock this layer. I'll make a new layer so I can design on top of my golden ratio. So I've actually never done a kind of a demo like this. So this is kind of going to be something new for me. I'm going to use the text from my article, I think. Let me see. What do I have for text? Let's see what I have here. Oh, that's the assessment. My articles. So I'm going to use my editorial article. And we'll see if I can kind of design it based on the structure of the golden ratio. I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm willing to try to do it live. All right. So I need to think. I have a couple of images that went with it. The house image and the kids image. I'm going to go to my other folder where I'd already corrected them to the correct size. And I'm just going to kind of drag these images in at whatever size, that the largest size that I can, so I know what I have to work with here. I have one really large image. Ooh, my allergies are awful today. All of a sudden, both eyes have gotten very, very watery, so that's always fun when you're designing. So let's see. So I've got this big image here, which maybe I try to fit it over here. Oy, yeah, you have it worse than me. And bring it down to the bottom. And then I have my, whoops, my headlines, stay or go. I'm just going to import in my paragraph styles. So you can do that from other files. If you go to load paragraph styles, you can actually click on and go to your assignment and just open all of your paragraph and character styles, bring them all in. Make sure you've checked them all and hit OK, and it'll load them all for you. Pretty, yeah, saves you a ton of time. All right, so I got my headline, which I'm going to draw a text box up here. 4. I'm going to put stay or go. And again, this is a little bit off, so I can turn this off just to kind of see where I'm at, and maybe I want to vertically center that. Oh, I always forget what that's located now. View. Type, it's under. They changed it, and I always forget where it's located. Type, not styles. Text wrap? No. Type in tables. Oh, where are you? I'm just gonna have to Google it. I'm probably looking right at it. It used to be up on the top. That's another thing. When you've been working it vertically center text in InDesign. When you've been working in InDesign as long as I have, and they move where things are located, it gets so annoying. And they kind of move where that option was. Select the text, click the align button. No. Yes, but where is view? Grids guide? Nope. Vertically center text in the text box. Where is that option? Type tool. Yes, but I don't think I'm Googling it correctly either. It used to be right up here. It was one of these, and they moved it. I seriously go through this like once a mod too, where I can't find where that option is. And I want to find it for you guys because I'm sure. And somebody is watching at home right now going, "It's this!" and yelling at the screen at me. I feel like it's in here. Nope. All right, I'm going to manually do this. I want that line to lay right on top of my image, purposely. I'm going to turn this layer back on. Copy. And this is my subheadline and my author byline. All right, vertically center text in text box in InDesign. Text frame options, that's what I'm looking for. Text frame options. Where are you located? Object text frame options. There it is. See, not exactly intuitive. Vertical justification, centered. That's what I'm trying to do. So that way, what it does is it centers it right in the middle. Text frame options. And need to close that up a little bit though, but I'm gonna have to visually do that one. And you might wanna, I guess that works. Next, I have the rest of my this is the old one where I'd already Oops. I purposely didn't save it last time. All right, that looks good. So add in this one here. This should be my body copy. And again, this is a little, let's see if I have a grid. I didn't set up a grid. Um, 25, 12 point. Move some of these returns. And trying to get this to fit into the golden ratio, I might need to change up, you know, how I've designed or my my text that I've decided to use. My fonts and things like that. You know, I might need to go with a different body copy font. Maybe go from 11 over 13 or something. Change my grid when I do that. I want an increment now every 13 because I want it to match my leading. Got a lot of space in between these paragraphs, so I might need to, oops, 0.0125, let's see. Subheadline, subheadline. Need to fix my bullet points, not set up correctly. Again, easiest way to do that is to delete them first in Word, and then you can make a bullet point as a paragraph style. I didn't get to that one. Basis off of body copy, I'm gonna call it bullets. Where are you? Bullets and numbering. So you want the left indent to be a positive number and the first line indent to be the same exact thing, a negative number, and that will line it up like this. See how all the text is lined up? I need to turn off this back layer for a second. Can't even see what I'm doing. Remove that. Ooh, remove these extra bullets that are still in here from this one. Let's see, where did that end? Finance, cons, moving is a pain. Where am I at? So what if we did this and this? That's not a bullet. That is a subheadline. I need to take out those space after and all of those. This is a bullet. And so I don't know if I would be able to get this in here. I might be able to if I kind of add to my ratio. No, the golden ratio just might not work for this article unless if maybe I start to move things over here, like the image over into this area, and I start with my text. See how I just have to, you know, I have to move some things around to try to see if I can get it to work. Maybe the text starts over here. I think that's too big. I probably want this to be 2 columns, which I can make one of my text boxes 2 columns. I don't need to actually draw a column or a second text box. I can just change it up here when I'm on the black arrow, and I can change the gutter width as well to 0.25. Probably help if I set this all up first. Pros and cons. And what do I have left? My in conclusion. Which is subheadline, and this is just regular body copy. It is not a bullet. Do I have this underlined or is that my font? I think that is my font, which was a bad choice. I think I need to change my headline font to get this to work as well. No, I would suggest, it's really up to you what you want to do. I'm just trying to show you, like, can a golden ratio work with something like this? I mean, you don't have to do anything that I'm doing. It's just some ideas of how to, if you don't know how to come up with a grid for week 2, to, you have to go and put together articles that are going to span 3 pages. So it's something for you to try if you want to. That's a better font. Oh, what was that just called? There we go. Better font choice. Why do I feel like it's underlined still? Oh, I know what that is. Huh. I added a rule. I forgot I did that. Where was it? Paragraph rule? No paragraph rule. There we go. Although I still like the idea of changing that. And bringing these, I think I'm going to bring these up to my margin. I feel like if I go to object, what was it? Object, text frame options. If I do this enough times, I'll remember where it's located. Do that for this one too. There we go. All right, so I've got all of this into the 2 columns. This, however, needs to. This is within this area. Got my image in here. I'm going to add my other image. Maybe overlaying it. I already have it over here. Over here. And we'll take a look and see how that looks. Oh, I was like, where's the rest of this text box? It's like running off the page. And maybe I'll give these a little bit of a order. Where's my colors? Where's my swatches? There we go. Oh, you can also import your swatches from another file. So you can just do the same thing, go those 4 lines and go load swatches and load them into from a different file. So if you worked on something a couple of mods ago and you were like, I had a really good color scheme for that, you can just completely load your swatches in from that color scheme, which is pretty cool. I'll make sure the stroke is on the inside to keep it inside of my margins. And let's take a look. Oh, cons. Missed one. So it fits within the golden ratio. I can turn that back on. So my layers. So I guess we can kind of do the golden ratio. You know, it's a little bit different down here just because of the text. I guess I could try and do something like this, maybe. Fit it a little bit better. I don't like, though, that I would probably close up this image, though, and bring this up. I don't like this one line by itself down there. That's not good. And I would like it to somewhat, although I guess it does down here. And then I would probably bring this one down here. So have that set up like this. Maybe even then move this image here. And could even use just some design elements, you know, some color blocking. In here. Maybe even put way too many things open. Get that right to the edge. You know, something like that. I'll probably open this one up to the, there we go. Didn't have it all the way over. I don't know why I'm not, my text boxes don't appear to be snapping to my grids. That drives me bananas. Yeah, it'll be bleeding across both pages because it's a, I set this up as a spread. You wouldn't do this from page 3 to page 7, but you know, for this one, you know, the way I have this set up is as a 2-page spread, it would just go across the gutter, which is fine. You know, I could even do something similar up here with the gray and have it go right over. You know, behind here or something like that. Lighten it up. I'm outside of my margin, but you know, something that if I had to bleed, I could do something like that. For this week, I'm going to go over tomorrow our assignment in more detail. But for this week, what you're working on is, hold on. You're going to be adding in the rest of the articles. So you're going to be using pages 3 to 6 for your feature article, and you need to use all of the copy. But we're going to go over that tomorrow. I just kind of wanted to go over, you know, how to set up a different grid today. You know, this doesn't necessarily have too much to do with your assignment this week. It's just, you know, coming up with ideas of how to set up a different grid. But yeah, so we'll go over that tomorrow. So I'm going to save this. As week 2, I guess. Whoops, wrong folder. I'm going to name this Golden Ratio article. And I'll just package that in there so I have it. It might even, I keep seeing little things that I would change. It might even, whoops, move this here, move this article down to the bottom. Make sure it's saved in my package folder because I changed it. And we can kind of take a look at that. So here it would be page 1, well, page 2 to page 3, but it's definitely a spread. I feel like there's a way to view this as a spread. Here we go. Really? um, Zoom is not having a good time today. Edit my pages. Where are you? Not that one. Let's try trashing page one. All right, there we go. All right. See it side by side. So, you know, again, it kind of flows into that golden ratio. I get, you know, it works. You can design a magazine layout, you know, using the actual golden ratio. That's what we were kind of trying to prove today, and I think we proved it. You can see where this is just the Adobe showing you where the page fold would be. So got a nice big image, and everything's lined up on our grid. And it's the little things in your design, especially when it comes to the text, like making sure that things are lined up, like, you know, you don't have the word safe by itself up here. You know, if that happens, or you don't have, you know, con starts down here, you want to remember that proximity when things are going from column to column. So you got to really look at where columns end and where they begin, and really work with your text to get it to fit. And if that means that you have to adjust you know, the sizes of the text in your paragraph styles to get it to work, that's something that you might have to tweak. And then if you do tweak the leading, remember you need to change up the grid, the baseline grid, to reflect that. That's what I had to do in this. You know, when I changed the leading from 14 to 13, I had to have that baseline grid reflect the number 13 increment instead of 14. So those are the things that you have to do to kind of get it to work. So again, you know, if I kind of made comments to you like, hey, watch where things are falling, or you might want to look at how it's laying out across the columns, those are the little things that you want to look for, but it's really going to make all the difference in your design. All right, so tomorrow we're going to get into more of laying out those other pages in the assignment, and putting that all together. So there'll be demos of that. So if you are able to make it tomorrow, that would be great. And if not, just make sure that you're watching the video. And any questions before we end today? And if no, no worries. All right, well, I hope to see you tomorrow, and thanks for coming today, and have a great day.